Hey there, true believers. Those that follow my channel know that I don't usually like to go negative when breaking down a show and its characters, and prefer to focus on the things that I like. So in a way, I've gone kind of rogue. So I'm going to keep this kind of shortish. The final episode of She-Hulk Season 1 recently aired, and I found myself looking back at the last 9 weeks and thinking, what was the point? And this thought isn't restricted to the show. I've been an avid fan of the MCU ever since I saw Iron Man in the theatre. But something about the fourth phase has been sort of off, and I think people are feeling this. She-Hulk may be the victim of my growing frustration with the lack of story and direction, but I think there's more to it than this. Before I get into the bad, and the downright awful, I want to acknowledge that not everything in this show was a dumpster fire. On paper, the idea of a superpowered lawyer that represents superheroes is a good premise. At this point in the MCU, it makes sense that the vigilantes may start to have legal problems and require some solutions. Second, Madison was a gift. At first I thought she would really annoy me, but she was legit one of the funniest things in the show.
Madison King. Madison is with 2 N's, 1 Y, but it's not where you think.
And thirdly, Daredevil. I thought his walk of shame scene was kind of annoying, like a lot of people, but this episode was head and shoulders above the rest, and the closest the show came to becoming its premise. Charlie Cox has the character of Matt Murdock down, and the character shines through. So let's move on to the bad. To a certain degree, I think that Marvel are a victim of their own success. Marvel promised movie-quality visuals in their TV shows, and this feels like a broken promise. On the same note, there's very little action in this superhero show, and considering Jen barks on about it being her show multiple times, her action sequences are literally the worst in the MCU. But also, ignoring those superhero elements and moving on to the legal elements of the show, this is equally bad. She-Hulk pitched itself in the same vein as Ally McBeal, Suits, Boston Legal and The Good Wife, just to name a few, and it's inferior to all of them. Finally, let's talk about the ugly. Okay, let's get this one out of the way first, as I think the internet has talked about this enough already. In a haphazard, poor attempt at showing the lived experiences of women, the writer's misandry is showing a little.
So, I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
The men portrayed in the show are caricatures and one-dimensional. At one point, I couldn't tell if one of the actors was jumping out the window because the script said so, or he realised what he'd signed up for. The finale attempted to break down the norms of storytelling by sort of breaking the fourth wall and having a meta moment to end on. The problem with this is the story arcs and subplots were genuinely a mess and poorly written, so a moment that should have brought everything together or made a commentary on comic book tropes was an excuse to take an eraser to the poorly conceived narrative of the show. Finally, let's talk about Jen Walters, as it's just Jen who suffers in this mess. I wish it didn't need to be said, but I'm going to place a disclaimer here. I'm not against strong women or strong female representation. 90% of my video content evolves around a show that depicts one of the strongest women in TV to date. That being said, the MCU's She-Hulk is not it. In episode 1, Jen is shown to be selfish, entitled, lacking in empathy and arrogant.
Oh, so you didn't wind up alone? Hiding away on some remote beach with no friends, no relationships, never seeing your family?
When presented some of these rather unlikable qualities, I thought, okay, this can go one of two ways. I figured over the course of the season, she would have a moment of self-reflection or understand her responsibilities or something. I even thought the show may have made a comment on the potential follies of promiscuity, but they wiped that out as well. But when all was said and done, she hadn't changed. She hadn't done any introspection or admitted any wrongdoing on her part. No accountability. Instead of taking responsibility and becoming a hero, she complained to the highest power she could find and get them to change the world so it fit her wants. This is not empowerment. It's the personal insecurities of a writing team that tell women the world is against them and men hold them down. Ironic then that one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, a man, gave them this very high-profile opportunity. If I have some advice for the writers and showrunners, don't shout louder, make better arguments.